Today on CityCast Denver. From cutting ties with anti-vax family members to friendships fizzling out, many of us are ditching relationships that no longer suit us, especially those that don't agree with our views on health and safety during a pandemic. But can we break up with an institution like, let's say, a health department? Douglas County certainly did, and it's unclear what that's going to mean for the 300,000 plus residents that need a health department now more than ever. Today is Tuesday, September 14th, 2021. I'm Bree Davies, and this is CityCast Denver. Well, Elliot Wenzler, welcome to CityCast Denver.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on.
So we're going to talk about Douglas County, and I think to start, there's things that people maybe don't know about Douglas County that makes it different from other counties if you don't live there or you're not involved in the politics. So I know you've been covering Douglas County for Colorado Community Media for a couple of years now, and I just want to get into first of all, where is Douglas County, and sort of what are the demographics, or who lives there?
Yeah, so Douglas County is kind of a mixed suburban rural county south of Denver. So it's just below Arapahoe County. It starts with like Highlands Ranch, Lone Tree, Parker, those areas, and then goes down into Castle Rock. And then there's also a giant, rural area within the county that goes all the way down to the border with El Paso. It's kind of a county that the demographics we're starting to see them sort of change. We definitely see, based on elections, that it is still a very conservative county. We have started to see some of those margins change in recent elections, just getting the tiniest bit smaller, the tiniest bit more purple. So it's a community that we're starting to see impacted by the growth of the Denver area as a whole, but still very conservative.
And the reason I wanted to sort of set this up this way is because there's this bigger story that we're going to talk about right now, which is these tensions between Douglas County and the Tri-County Health Department. And in recent weeks, it sort of reached a boiling point. And now Douglas County has decided to break away from the Tri-County Health Department. Can you explain what exactly is going on there?
This is something that's been kind of brewing for a while now, throughout the pandemic mostly. So back in March, when the pandemic really started, March of 2020, Tri-County Health Department, which serves Adams, Arapahoe, and Douglas County, they put out a stay-at-home order, similar to the ones we saw throughout many areas at that time. When they did that, several state legislators representing Douglas County sent a letter to the commissioners of Douglas County saying, we think you should leave this health department, because the commissioners had kind of had this disagreement about if that measure was necessary. They felt like they didn't have time to really get on board. And the legislators said, well, then if they're not listening to the elected officials, then you just shouldn't be a part of that district. So that's kind of where things all started, with this conflict between local control and health departments having their legal ability to do what they believe is necessary to maintain public health.
Neville and other Republican leaders suggested today that Douglas County should cut ties with its health department, Tri-County Health Department, so that Douglas County would not have to listen to the health experts there who are calling for a local stay-home order. Our Steve Steger looks at the policy.
Right. So after those state legislators sent that letter, we didn't really hear much about this issue until July, when Tri-County put another public health order in place. This time it was a mask mandate for indoor spaces. And just after that is when the commissioners sent a notice to Tri-County saying, we will be leaving the health department in a year, which is a statutorily required notice. You're required to let them know a year in advance.
Okay.
It was a couple months later we learned that Tri-County and Douglas County were actually in negotiations trying to find a way that they could remain together beyond that year advance that they'd given. And so the terms that they came to were that Douglas County said they would stay with the health department until at least January 2023, and Tri-County said they would allow each county that they represent, the commissioners, to opt out of any public health order moving forward. And so that was sort of the agreement between those two entities. And that was in the fall of 2020 is when they came to that agreement, and Douglas County said, yeah, we're sticking around for a little bit longer.
Wild. So the Tri-County Health Department could make a health mandate, but then Douglas County could choose to opt out of that.
Right. I do think it's important to note that at that time, a lot of the mandates, I think, most of them were being put in place at the state level. So Douglas County was still being required to follow various mandates, but it was coming from the state level rather than Tri-County. It's only since the governor devolved those different decisions to the local level that we've started to really see those tensions kind of ignite again.
So speaking of that, do you, in the reporting that you just done in general about Douglas County, do you have a sense of public opinion on this conflict, or where folks who live in Douglas County stand on the issue?
Yeah, so that's always kind of a tricky thing because I think a lot of the time we hear, obviously, from some of the loudest voices. So coming into a lot of the meetings around this, we hear public speakers who have, really cheered the commissioners on. There have been several meetings where that's been the majority of those who speak to the commissioners during public comment.
To the people screaming for medical fascism, which is what this is, please at least consider this. If our country goes in this direction, there will come a time that you will have a medical decision imposed on you or your children that you don't agree with. If you give up my right to waive...
But then we also hear the other side of it. And there was an official poll that was done by the commissioners at one point that asked about this issue. That survey showed that 60% of the respondents said they felt like it was a, quote, good idea for the county to be a part of Tri-County Health. So we kind of have two different things that we're seeing, from public meetings to this scientifically conducted survey. But commissioners responded to that survey saying they kind of felt like residents weren't necessarily well informed on the issue. And so that maybe that's why a reason that folks responded the way that they did.
This is such a local politics issue, no matter where you are, which is there's the vocal people, and are they representative of the larger population? Or are, you know what I mean? It's hard to tell. And when you're a person that's in public office, of course you have to listen to the folks that are the most vocal, because it's in front of everybody. It's being displayed. But, then something like this, like you're saying, a conducted survey is saying, well, maybe more people were actually in support of mask mandates and things like that. But I don't know. It's hard to tell.
It's hard to tell. And I should point out, there are also very vocal voices on the side of we should not leave Tri-County, we should remain. I think that just from what I've seen more at public meetings. I've seen more from the other side, but there's definitely vocal voices on both sides of this issue.
So you said a minute ago that Douglas County and Tri-County Health had reached this deal last year where Douglas County would stick around in exchange for Tri-County Health, allowing them to opt out of any public health order. Then over the summer, the Delta variant started spreading, schools were getting ready to reopen, and we started seeing debates over mask mandates all over the country. What happened that made all this reignite in Douglas County?
Yes, so all that changed with the most recent round of mask mandates coming down from Tri-County Health Department. So they initially put in place a mask mandate for students ages 2 through 11, but it still allowed for that availability for counties to opt out of it. So after they decided on that, the Douglas County commissioners voted to do so. They voted to opt out. So Tri-County called another meeting and said, let's reconsider that mask mandate and let's reconsider the availability of opting out. In that meeting, they decided to no longer allow opt-outs, basically saying this has prevented us from providing our statutorily required duties, and they put in place a more sweeping mask mandate for all students and teachers in schools inside. So it was after they did that the county commissioner said, well, we're no longer allowed to opt out. That was our earlier agreed upon provision for staying with Tri-County. Therefore, we are going to be pulling out.
Small. And in a lot of ways, Douglas County is just too big to be small. We joined Tri-County when we were 4,000 people with 357,000. This isn't a divorce from Tri-County Health. It's just an empty nest. And that's okay. It's okay
So
for kids to
what happened last week is they voted to create a Douglas County Health Department. That health department is now in existence. So what happens today is the commissioners are planning to appoint 5 members to their Board of Health. And so once that happens, the jurisdiction will go to the Douglas County Health Department. Tri-County Health Department will no longer be their agency. And so that's planned to take place today. Once that happens, that Board of Health will be able to meet and decide if they want to put any public health orders in place. If they don't want to, they will also select a public health executive director for their new department. So those are some of the things that the average resident can expect to look for, because it's hard to say what's really going to happen until that Board of Health has an opportunity to meet and make these decisions.
Thinking about, again, Douglas County as a more conservative county, having its own health department, is this going to require more taxes, or is this going to be a more lax approach to COVID? Like, what do you predict or see for the future of this new health department?
So the question about taxes has been a really, really big question on a lot of people's minds and on the minds of county staff and commissioners as well, because folks keep asking, is this going to require an increase in taxes? How on earth are we going to pay for this department? And, the answer that I've gotten when I've asked the county about this is we're still trying to find out exactly how much this is going to cost and how we're going to pay for it. They're really hoping to use, federal and state dollars on this and not, one commissioner said he really thinks that it's not the plan to raise taxes, but we just don't know yet. And they don't know yet what this is going to cost or how it's going to be paid for. As far as COVID measures go, that one is really difficult to answer, not knowing how the pandemic is going to go, not knowing who is going to be the public health director or what the dynamic of this specific Board of Health will be like. That one is just really hard to know what's going to happen there.
Kind of remains to be seen.
Definitely.
What the future will look like.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess finally, so Tri-County Health is now dual county health. It's just left to Adams and Arapahoe counties. Have they said anything about what the future is for Tri-County Health, or if they are going to split off and create their own, or what's next for that?
Yeah, so my colleague Ellis Arnold reported on that just after we found out that Douglas County was going to be leaving, and he learned that Adams and Arapahoe are both considering splitting from Tri-County as well, sort of spurred by this decision from the Douglas County commissioners. So really the whole fate of Tri-County is kind of up in the air right now. We don't know if it's going to be unicounty or dual county, or just, I know that the name is not the most important thing, but I'm very curious about what the name will turn into, and we just don't know.
What a wild thing to be going through in the middle of a public health crisis.
Right.
Well, Elliot, thank you so much for talking with me today and sort of parsing out this really complicated issue.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on.
And here's what else is happening in Denver today. According to Colorado Politics, President Biden is expected to be in Colorado from noon to 5 p.m. today, making an appearance at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in Golden. He'll be talking about clean energy jobs alongside Democratic U.S. Representatives Joe Neguse, Jason Crow, and Ed Perlmutter, and Denver Mayor Michael Hancock. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you're a new listener to the show, welcome and thanks for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, why not take a minute to tell a friend about us, rate CityCast Denver wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye! It's the longest siren ever. Hold on.